be with the community again. Also have a little bit of a concern because you all seem to be doing pretty well without me. You know, when you leave a community, you want them to do well, but you don't want them to do that well. So my call from beyond came from a place far beyond the borders of the United States, called Kabul, Afghanistan. And the call wasn't really a call, it was an email that arrived in my inbox on Thursday, September 9th, 3:50 a.m. in the morning, Eastern Standard Time. It was one of the first things I saw when I woke up. And it was a request from an Afghan who I'll refer to by his middle name, Khan. And he was asking for help. So what I'd like to do with the community this morning is describe the nature of his request and the ongoing communication I've had with Mr. Khan over the past 2 months now. And invite us to consider what it means to help, the nature of helping. When can we be helpful and when can't we be helpful, and how do we know? And offer some reflection on deciding who we help and who we choose not to help. So let me tell you a little bit about Mr. Khan. I've never met him. Before he sent me his request for help from Kabul, I got a message from Tariq, who I know and many of us know. We have a history together. Tariq is an Afghan I met while deployed in 2012 to Afghanistan on a leave of absence from this congregation. And my journey that later became our journey with Tariq began then and has continued. This congregation was a part of the process of resettling Tariq, his then 3 children and his wife, as they came ultimately in February of 2016 to Buffalo. Some of you were present when Tariq visited the congregation and spoke on Memorial Day weekend. He rode the train for the first time from Buffalo to Poughkeepsie. Never been on a train before that. You heard him speak about his journey through the bureaucracy of the United States and trying to resettle as a special immigrant under visas authorized by Congress in 2009, called the Afghan Allies Protection Act. Tariq was eligible because his life was in danger and applied in 2010. It took him 6 years before finally arriving in the United States. Some of you went to the New Windsor cantonment that evening and were part of a Memorial Day commemoration. And I invited Tariq to name the Afghan interpreters he knew who had died during our candles of lament. And I'll never forget how he was able to recall from memory 17 people. So my encounter and the call from beyond from Mr. Khan began with my relationship with Tariq, with our relationship with Tariq. Because for Tariq, we were helpful to him, to his family. We helped him get here. We helped him resettle. I showed up with cash and a pickup truck filled with furniture donated by this congregation. And in the midst of the pandemic, when many of the refugees were losing jobs, this congregation offered financial assistance to more than a dozen families, Afghan and Iraqi families. Assistance that got them through with food, with utilities. And this congregation was helpful once again to that community. So we've earned ourselves a bit of a reputation as people who can be helpful. So when Mr. Khan needed help, he went to his friend Tariq and asked, who can I go to for help? And Tariq sent him to me. The request, which I'll share with you with his permission, that came to my inbox reads this way. The subject line read, Evacuation from Kabul. Dear Chris, I hope this email finds you with the best of health. This is Khan, Tariq's friend, who lives in Buffalo. I'm a permanent resident of the United States through the Special Immigrant Visa Program since August of 2019 and left behind from the evacuation process. I came to Kabul July 20th, 2021 to take my family out of Afghanistan to a safe country to be able to process their immigration case to join me in the USA. But unfortunately, I couldn't. And now we're stuck here. Then he goes on to list two separate immigration cases. First, for his immediate family, his wife, his son, and his daughter. Daughter's just 1.5 years at the time. The son is a few years older than that. And his second request is for his extended family. Mr. Khan has, he writes, a mother, 1 brother, and 5 sisters. He says his mother worked with different companies which were contractors of the US Army. And one of the companies is writing a letter so she can apply for a new visa that's called the P2 visa for Afghans who worked for non-governmental organizations in support of the US mission there. And he writes, the reason I wish to live together meaning his children, his wife, his mother, his sisters, and brother, is that I'm the only person who can work now and support and take care of all my family members. Most of them are female and single, and they can't work outside. And it would be difficult for me to split them between the United States and Afghanistan, because if I come to the United States alone, then I assume I won't be able to come back to care for my mother, brother, and sisters. I've tried many times to get in the airport during the evacuation process, but I couldn't get in. I filled out the evacuation form, which was provided by the US Embassy in Kabul, but I haven't received any email or call for directions. Many of my friends received emails and calls for flight arrangements, but I haven't received any call or email. I think my name is not included on the list of people to be evacuated from Afghanistan. So I need your help. My name should be added to the list of those people who are supposed to be evacuated from Afghanistan. And as for my extended family, I don't know whether they can travel with me. If they can, let me know so I can provide you their names. If they can't travel with me, then what is your suggestion? So in that letter to me, he laid out a very complicated situation and made an appeal for help. Since then, we've exchanged dozens of emails, and there have at times been gaps in his response, leading me at points to wonder if he was alive or dead. The most recent gap was 2 weeks. So what should I do? What can I do? I'll tell you what I did. First of all, I didn't promise anything because the situation is complex and I don't understand what the options are. But the first thing I did was contact my senators in the state of Pennsylvania, both Republican and Democrat. I was surprised to see when I visited the homepage of the Republican senator, there was actually a number to call for Afghans seeking assistance. So I called the number and I spoke with a congressional aide. She collected the information I'd received, details about each person and his immediate and extended family, and sent it on to her contact at the State Department. When I asked her, what happens next? She said, I just don't know. I did the same with the Republican, as I did with the Republican with the Democratic senator. The information was sent to some contact at the State Department and put on a list somewhere. And that was the end of the communication with the senator's office. No follow-up, no response. neither to me nor to Mr. Khan. So then I reached out to the senator in New York, Gillibrand and Schumer, because Mr. Khan was a resident of the state of New York. And I encouraged Mr. Khan to do the same. I gave him the contact to submit a request, which he did online. And I did. And neither he nor I got any response from the senator's offices in New York. So I continued to communicate with him and explore his options. And finally had to acknowledge to him that I can't help you. And I did it in an email. And I want to share with you that email, which I sent. And this email I sent on Friday, 5:44 in the morning. It was a rough night. I hadn't heard from Mr. Khan for over 2 weeks. And then he wrote to me. And I read it and wrote this message back. Mr. Khan, you are clearly facing a moral dilemma in which the stakes are high and there will be undesirable consequences no matter what path you choose. Your situation is not an easy one. Ultimately, the decision is yours to make, and you will need to live with the consequences of your decision. I recognize that and therefore cannot offer you advice on which course of action is best. I'm not a legal expert or an immigration expert. As to your question about whether sending your extended family to Pakistan might expedite your mother's application, I cannot comment on that. I'm a clergyman by training and profession, trained among other things in ethical decision-making. I have some networks and capacity to advocate, and this has proved helpful in Tariq's case. So perhaps I can be of some practical help to you in thinking through your options, the potential consequences of each course of action, helping you articulate what matters most to you so that you can arrive at a decision. You have an option to leave now with your wife and children, correct? Is there a specific organization offering to evacuate you to the United States? If you leave now to the United States, you can quickly find employment. Your children can enroll in school. Your wife can go to work or school or both. You can earn money and perhaps find a way to financially support your extended family from a distance. This would be easier if they were in Pakistan, it would seem to me. Most importantly, you and your wife and children will be more safe. The longer you stay in Afghanistan, the more likely you will be captured or killed, right? If you are captured or killed in Afghanistan, you will be of no help to your family, right? Is there a significant chance you will be captured or killed if you remain in Afghanistan? It seems this is a real possibility. Are you able to earn money to support your large family now in Afghanistan? Do you have significant savings so that you can stay in Afghanistan without work and still provide for your family? It seems to me the country is on the verge of financial collapse. If you stay in Afghanistan, how can you provide for your family? What is important for you? Providing safety and opportunity to your immediate family by taking them to the United States now, or staying in Afghanistan in order to keep your immediate family and extended family together? You need to consider the potential short-term and long-term consequences of each course of action. Mr. Khan, I have 5 children of my own, 3 sons and 2 daughters. I have a sister and my parents are still alive. My owner expects me to do what is in the best interest of my children, and that is what I do. I don't know what your mother expects of you. I don't know if you have a religious belief and follow teachings that can guide you in moments like this. Do you? These questions are for your own discernment. You need to answer them for yourself and not for me. Please don't feel obligated to reply with answers unless this kind of exchange with me will be helpful as you come to a decision. Finally, I regret Senator Gillibrand has not responded. On Sunday, I will speak to a group in New York about your case. What is your specific request of the US government at this time? Please tell me and we can advocate to the senator on your behalf. And I ended there. So I wanted to share some of that correspondence between me and Mr. Khan as an invitation both to consider what this congregation may do or not do with regards to Mr. Khan's specific case, but also to open up the larger question of helping. In my family, we have a prayer that I say before our meal. It's the most religious thing that I've given to my children consistently over the last 20 years of their lives. I learned it from a Buddhist monastery. It's very simple and it goes like this. We give thanks to all who made this meal possible, and we eat so we can grow strong, to love and help one another. The word help is there. I've said it at every mealtime with my family, every time we sat down for a meal for 20 years. But only through my encounter with Mr. Khan have I begun to think more deeply about the nature of helping. It seems that it's common among us that we want to be helpful. It seems that it's part of our covenant as a religious community, something to do with compassion, something to do with respect for the inherent worth and dignity. But there are times when the help we're able to provide is actually not helpful. It can come from the right place. But sometimes it can enable unhealthy patterns of behavior. We can all recall people in our own lives who we wanted to help, but perhaps found that they were beyond the help that we could provide. Mr. Khan responded immediately to my letter. I was very surprised by his response. He said, "Thank you so much for your support and for your help." I had written him thinking, I'm not being helpful to you. I can't get you on a list. I can't get your mother the visa that you want her to get. I can't do any of the things that you need. At least it appeared to me to be that way. But in fact, I couldn't help him in the ways that he thought he needed help, because he needed to make a decision. And if I was able to provide him with any help, it was guiding him to the point of accepting that he had to make a decision, and it was his alone to make. I couldn't make it for him. I wasn't willing to make it for him. I was not willing even to make a suggestion as he asked. Because it's hard for me to even imagine the kind of situation he's facing. And he alone has to live with the consequences of that decision, not me. So where I could be helpful, if at all, was in listening to him and asking questions, helping him explore his courses of action and consider long-term and short-term consequences. This seems like one of the ways we as a religious community can be helpful to one another. It's right to want to help, because at times we've all needed help. We don't live in isolation. We're bound together by the interdependent web of existence of which we're all a part. So there are a couple of lessons about helping that I've learned, and I'll close with this. One is, if someone comes asking for help, let them name the help. So I turned it back to Mr. Khan. How can we be helpful? What requests do you have of the United States government? Because one thing that we can do is we can advocate to our elected officials on his behalf. We can be allies. So let the person name the help that they need. That's an empowering way to be an ally with someone in that situation. Second is, don't promise to help where we can't offer help. I wish I could buy a ticket for his family and get them out of Kabul today. But wishful thinking and getting drawn into that is not helpful. The third way we can be helpful is by offering referrals. I gave him the contact information for his senators in New York. In his case, unfortunately, it wasn't helpful. But it's not ours to do what a person in need of help can do for themselves. And then finally, I've learned the importance of just listening, not offering suggestions, not offering advice, listening to understand a person's situation, a person like Mr. Khan, who's in the midst of a traumatic war zone situation, perhaps can't think clearly, perhaps can't see beyond his immediate need for food and electricity, and could use a dialogue partner like me to step back and look at the bigger picture and think about his options and the consequences of not deciding or postponing a decision. We can all do that for other people. We can listen to them. We can try to understand the problems that they're facing. We can explore courses of action, perhaps introduce options that a person may not have been aware of. And this way we can empower people who are in need of help with the power of choice. Finally, I just want to share a useful resource from our denomination about how we decide to direct our energies around social issues. We're living in a moment where thousands of Afghans have flooded into our communities. I volunteered one night at the Philadelphia airport for the American Red Cross, and in one night alone, over 500 people came through. I handed them water, I handed them food, I gave them blankets. I saw women, grandmothers as old as 70, 80 years old. I saw children as young as infants, months. I saw pregnant women. I saw people who were panicked. I saw people who were injured, people who were afraid. In the coming weeks and months, thousands of these people will be resettling into our communities. Over 1,000 will be admitted into New York alone, 985 in my state of Pennsylvania, and that's just the beginning. These people will need help. This congregation has a history of commitment to resettlement, a commitment that was disrupted by the previous presidential administration. We were prepared to receive the refugees and they never came. Well, here they are. They're coming in droves. What is this congregation's response? To help the congregation in your discernment around that, and I'll put this in the chat box, I'll just show you a resource from the UUA, from their Social Justice Education Handbook. This is online, and I'll put it in the chat so you can see. And this guides the denomination. It's also a useful guide for congregations in choosing an issue around grounding, accountability, fit, and opportunity. And each of these is defined. Grounding has to do with the issue. Does it have authentic and deep roots in our community? Does it link to the current identity and theology or philosophy of our congregation? Accountability is the issue of concern to marginalized groups in the congregation and the community. Is anti-oppression built into the project? Fit, is there a match between the congregation's resources, aspirations, and ability to make a real difference? And finally, opportunity. Is there a likelihood that the congregation can be respected in the public dialogue on this issue? From where I sit, as somebody who served as your minister for a decade, Mr. Khan's case and the resettlement of the Afghans has grounding, not only in our denomination, but in the particular history of the congregation at Rock Tavern. Accountability, fit. Because of your own story, because of the experience this community has had of successfully resettling an SIV visa applicant, Tariq, you have a story to tell, and you have power in that story to make a difference. The opportunity has come to my inbox. His name is Mr. Khan, and he's asking for help advocating on behalf of his mother, his 4 sisters, and his brother. If this congregation would like to respond to his appeal, I have all the information, which I'll disclose to the person who you designate to be the point of contact. It's not information I'm going to disclose over a Zoom meeting. This is a useful tool to think through high fit, high opportunity. This box is where you can find your focus. I can't answer that for the congregation. I'm no longer your minister, but I can just bring this and encourage you to consider it. I'll stop here.
Thank you, Chris. We're going to open it up for questions or comments from the congregation. Just raise your hand or start talking. Oops, there's some
Well, that's good.
interference. Mike, did you want to say something? You're unmuted now.
Yeah, well, Etty was just asking, how did